So it turns out that for at least one of the markings on the temple garment, the mark was not only cut into the garment itself, it was cut into the skin. And from what I can see, this goes back to the Freemasonry in the 1800s. In discussing the Masonic rituals, one source says, the candidate is escorted to a room where there are 3 candles burning. One of the lodge members takes the Mason's compass, or another sharp object, and pricks the candidate's bare skin. The candidate is then instructed to recite a formula to the effect that what he desires most is light. And in Mormonism, this changed to further light and knowledge. The other lodge members would remove his cable toe and hoodwink. The candidate would see the 3 candles burning in front of him, and he was told that they represented the sun, the moon, and the master of the lodge. The hoodwink is the blindfold, and the cable toe is the noose around his neck. And then moving into Mormonism, the clearest picture that we have of this comes from a woman named Mary Eddy Smith. She told her story in a book that was published in 1860 called 15 Years Among the Mormons. She says that during the endowment ceremony, a small pair of scissors was used to cut holes in the garments. But she says for the symbol over the knee, the members were literally cut, deep enough to leave a scar so they could be recognized by other Mormons. She goes on to say that the gash over the right knee is now often omitted, because many of the women objected to it. She also says that the entire initiation lasted 10 hours. This history of Mormons being cut in the knee is also supported by Fawn Brody in her book No Man Knows My History. In the beginning, the cut across the knee was apparently deep enough to penetrate the flesh and leave a scar. But this practice was eventually abandoned as a result of the protests from Mormon women. Another evidence for the garment mark being cut into the flesh comes from a man named Thomas Coleman. Thomas was a black man who was brought to Utah as a slave. And in 1866, Thomas was blood atoned by members of the church with his own Bowie knife. And in addition to being cut off from the church just below the ears, he had also been cut over his right knee. I'm not sure why, but perhaps it was a warning to other Mormons if they didn't adhere to the teachings of the leaders of the church. Anyway, crazy things about the Mormon church you didn't know, part 1000. If you would like to support me in my research and get some added perks, please consider subscribing to my Patreon.